Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with another movie review for you, talking about Clown in a Cornfield. Here is an exclusive, you can only get it here, clip from the movie.
Let's hide in the attic.
No, in the basement. Why can't we just get in the running car?
Are you crazy? Let's hide behind the chainsaws.
Smart. Shh, I'm being quiet. Breathing on me.
I probably put up a disclaimer, but that's obviously not an actual clip from this movie, although I feel like this movie could have easily been based on that commercial from Geico. Let's talk about clowns standing out in cornfields. Welcome back to the garage. Gerald here with you, of course. And it's another horror movie that I got a chance to see early, so of course I'm going to do a review for it here on the channel. We're talking about Eli Craig's Clown in a Cornfield, which is based on the popular YA or young adult novel from 2020 by the same title, written by Adam Cesar. Quinn and her father have just moved to the quiet town of Kettle Springs, hoping for a fresh start, but instead she discovers a fractured community that has fallen on hard times. As the locals bicker amongst themselves and tensions boil over, a sinister, grinning figure emerges from the cornfields to cleanse the town of its burdens, one bloody victim at a time. Woo! What? That sounds legit. Like amazing. Say less. Let me tell you what I thought about it. There are some positives, there are some negatives. At the end of the day, unfortunately, I end up kind of right down the middle on this movie. It's kind of average, especially for a clown horror movie or a clown slasher in this case. I'm going to do a quick spoiler section at the end of the review. So after I give you my score and my quick breakdown here, I'll let you guys know whenever we're entering spoils territory, because there are some pretty heavy spoilers in the movie. But in order to give you my gripes with the film and really my negatives are all centered around the spoiler part of the plot. So I don't want to talk about that quite yet, but I will let you know when we get there. It reminded me a lot of movies that we've gotten recently, like Thanksgiving by Eli Roth, which I think is superior to this film. Dark Harvest, which came out last year, centered around kind of the Halloween season. Founders Day, which came out last year, which I frankly did not like, was very, very similar to this, because actually they celebrate Founders Day in Cornfield also. So another one that's pretty easy to draw comparisons to. But it's essentially a very heavy cliched, a ton of tropes. All the greatest hits are in use here from your regular run-of-the-mill slasher film. The opening scene to this film is involving clowns, teenagers, and cornfields. However, it is basically a replicated scene of the opening scene from Jaws from 1975. It's literally Jaws with a different setting. So look, that's fine. Filmmakers and actors or whatever can borrow from their favorites to come up with ideas, to pay homage to, and I was okay with all of that. I just thought that tonally it felt like a lot of those films I mentioned, and some of them I really did enjoy. With Founders Day aside, most of them were pretty good, and I liked them. But another thing that a lot of those movies I mentioned have is comedy. And they know when to blend that comedy into the horror story that we are getting. So Clown in a Cornfield uses that YA material as its origin, and which is like technically not rated R. But then once it has that demographic, it's factoring in, and I'm talking about the movie specifically, it's factoring in the R-rated stuff, right? The gore, the blood, the gruesome kills, which there are a few really good ones in this movie, but there's also a few that are kind of like stale and just kind of come out of nowhere. So that's my biggest issue with the film overall. I did enjoy it at the end of the day, and I had fun with it, but I just feel like everything seemed kind of rushed when it comes to the moments that should really matter in this movie. Whether you're talking about the relationships between the characters, whether you're talking about the kills, because the killer, which is a clown, I mean, there's no spoiling there, coming into the scene, doing the kill, and then leaving. There's no tension building. There's one scene with one of the kids in the main group of friends that's at his house, somebody's at his door, and that kind of classic trope plays out a little bit, where it's like, okay, you get a sense of tension with the score and the music, but aside from that scene, they all just kind of happen fairly quickly. And then once the kill's over, that's it. And honestly, the dead body, or where is our friend XYZ is only briefly mentioned upon after the fact. We know they were killed because we saw it. There's just not a lot of time devoted to that specific kill ever again. So I did like our final girl, our main star in the movie, which is Quinn, portrayed by Katie Douglas. Her and her dad are the ones that migrated there from, I think, Philadelphia, a much larger city, obviously. This is a small Hobunk town. And the movie starts in that opening scene that I said was a copy of Jaws. It says 1991 on the title card. So the movie starts in 91, but then it flash forwards after the opening credits in that opening sequence, a la Your Screams or I Know What You Did Last Summer, is where it has like a shocking kill or surprising moment in the opening, and then we kind of fast forward to where we are now, and it kind of builds to what we're going to be getting, and you see how those two things kind of connect. Well, the thing that Scream did, obviously phenomenally brilliant, as it's one of my favorite movies ever, and a lot of films like that in the horror genre, is we do connect to the group that we're following, and we do care for their well-being. We don't want them to be killed by a clown in a cornfield, for example, or Ghostface, or whatever the case may be. But in this movie, with the exception of Quinn and her father, it's almost non-existent character development for the others in the group. There's about 4 or 5 other kids, and for some reason, the cops and the teachers, they just don't like them. They're a group of hooligans. They're up to no good. We find out throughout the course of the movie, which I think is also in the trailer, that they are running a YouTube channel that has 65,000 subscribers. Hey, you guys are doing it. I'm proud of you. But on the channel, they do reenactments of that 1991 murder, or they use it as an inspiration, I should say, for their channel, where the clown is murdering people in the videos that they're making. But of course, it's fake. It's like short films they put on YouTube. Now, I can't really get off too much further without getting into spoilers. I will say that if you've heard people saying Friendo is going to be a horror icon, or Friendo is waiting in line to get on the Mount Rushmore of slashers, or even killer clowns for that matter, please take a seat. Take a lap around the block. Like, relax, okay? That's not going to happen. Pennywise, Art the Clown. I mean, guys, we have to get a hold of ourselves when it comes to hyping up material in its infancy stages. Now, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if they make 7 or 8, clowns in a cornfield movies, and it becomes an icon in a Halloween costume, and, this, that, music, score, original soundtrack, John Carpenter's involved, I mean, all this shit, then maybe. But right now, based on what we saw, which is essentially a R-rated version of Goosebumps, I liked it, but Friendo is not a horror icon at this point. The movie literally is coming out tomorrow. I'm going to talk about it more in depth in spoilers, but what they do in this film, and I'm not sure if it's like that in the book, is they do drop a huge kind of like plot point halfway through the movie, maybe even a little past that. And that's when you start to care about certain people involved in that plot development. However, you would have had to have been riding with them already for like 60% of the movie. So if you're already checked out, but in my opinion, that was too little too late. I do like that it's something new and fresh that we don't really ever see in this slasher genre, not very often. At the end of the day, as I'm about to give you my score, Clown in a Cornfield is just too lower echelon to have such an exciting premise, and on top of that, to have such an exciting director behind it, because Eli Craig also directed Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is one of my favorite horror comedies ever. I just expected more with that involvement and with the title, honestly, because you hear Clown in a Cornfield and it's a horror movie, and you think, well, this is going to be 80s schlock, like Reborn, you know what I mean? But they don't play it that way. It's much more Fear Street or, Hulu original movie is kind of what it feels like. And I'm not saying that those can't be good, because some of them are. I just expected more and something a little bit different. Now, I did expect a clown in a cornfield, and that happened. So in that regard, it met my expectations. Let me give you my score. Clown in a Cornfield from me is going to get a 6. A 6 out of 10. At the end of the day, if you love teen slasher movies, this is a decent entry. But I am not going to get on board with any of those channels or fans that are saying, let's put Friendo on the all-star team of horror slashers. That's just crazy to me. 10 years from now, maybe we'll revisit that and I'll look foolish, but I just think it's way too early to be considering that based on what we saw in this film. All right, so a 6 out of 10. Now we're entering spoiler territory. I'm going to tell you a couple things that I really kind of hated about this movie that really brought that score down for me, but you will be spoiled going forward. So click off the video if you've not seen Clown in a Cornfield yet, or if you've not read the book and you don't want to be spoiled. Otherwise, if you're sticking around, it's on you. 2 major swerves that the movie takes after that halfway point in the film. We find out that Cole, who is the young man who seems to have a bit of a courtship going with Quinn, our lead final girl, and he's the town rebel, or considered the town rebel, the leader of this kind of gang of kids that everybody hates. And his father is played by Kevin Durand, who came up in Abigail last year. He's a character actor that you probably know from everywhere. He's all over the place. So his father ran the factory that burned down in this town, which they were famous for their corn syrup, their high fructose corn syrup. And Friendo the Clown was the mascot for that corn syrup. So that's the whole tie-in there. Well, Cole is this young man who, by the way, seems very nice, very sweet, very, very honest, nice young man. So it just always was kind of weird that everybody in the town that was over high school age hated him. I mean, even his parents, well, when we have one scene with him and his folks, Kevin Durand and the lady playing his mom, and even they seem kind of dismissive of him. And, the teacher, the cops, there's a waitress at the diner that doesn't seem very interested in helping him when he needs it. But he's always so, well-spoken and polite. So it seemed really weird. Like, this is not the rebellious guy that all these people should be looking down on like that. Well, you find out that I'm not so crazy in thinking that, because here we go. Spoilers, as I mentioned. Spoilers. So, Cole, we find out during a pretty pivotal chase scene with the clown that he is basically a closeted gay kid. He thinks he's gay. He thinks he might be. He doesn't know. He's been battling with how he feels. There was a scene a few minutes before this where he makes out with Quinn, and he cuts that short. She's a girl, so at the time you're like, all right, well, he's a high school kid. He's nervous, whatever. I didn't think for a second he's gay. But anyway, he cuts that makeout session short. A couple scenes later is when we get this reveal that he's battling with the fact that he thinks he's gay. The reason that comes out in that scene is because Rust, who is another kind of burly dude, looks like a football player that we meet early in the movie, he seems kind of off too, but you think he might actually end up being the clown, honestly, or one of the villains in the film. Turns out he's just another high school kid who's kind of just an outcast and just doesn't really belong in the group, so he kind of sticks to himself. Well, Rust and Cole apparently had some type of a relationship or loved each other or had sex, or I don't know, but they're both gay. We find out in that scene, which, look, I mean, it's fine. I am an ally of the gay community. I think that's great. But in the film, it's just a very strange swerve. Like, I feel like if you're going to have gay characters in your horror slasher, which we don't get enough, frankly, so please do, but we don't have to make that a reveal like when with the slasher, like when the killer's revealed. Like, I mean, we don't have to have, oh my God, they're gay, and we're freaking out about it. Like, it's normal. Like, let's just have Cole be gay, from the beginning, if that's what we're going to do. So I don't know, the whole reveal part of it was kind of weird to me. I did like the incorporation of that relationship and the fact that they were gay, because like I said, that just doesn't really show up in these types of tropey teen horror movies. The other weird swerve is, which I hated the whole final 20 minutes of the movie, because it's all narration and exposition. It's like they're reading the book to us, but it turns out that the elders in the town, the adults in the town, since the 90s, on this Founders Day that comes around once a year, they essentially perform a version of the Purge where they kill people in the town that aren't on board with the way they want the town to be, basically. It's really weird. It's a really weird kind of motivation, including the sheriff, including the teacher that we meet that was very scolding to the kids. Who else? Including Cole's father, Kevin Durand, is like the main dude. And he comes in dressed as a Joker at the end, which is also weird. They're all dressing up as clowns. And in this particular traditional evening, they happen to be trying to kill these kids, of which Cole is one, and that's his son. So that's a huge, what? Why? I mean, I get it that you're disappointed in your son, or maybe there's homophobia, kind of underlying narrative there, and a topical story, parents that don't want their kids to be gay and whatever. But killing him, and not only killing him, but killing him brutally while you're dressed as a clown, just seems like a little out there, even for the parents that are like, get out of my house, you can't live under my roof. Even that seems more normal than like killing them with a pitchfork. But the whole tie-in with social media, because they have the YouTube channel, and there's a lot of devotion towards talking about Wi-Fi when they first moved there, and the small town versus Philly, and like having this whole, like, I won't say PC, but this whole kind of like political agenda. It felt like that, at least from the movie standpoint. I don't know if the book is like that, where you're pushing this narrative that times are changing, basically. Everything's so different than what it used to be. And in this case, it would have been the early 90s. But obviously, the further back you go, the more different it was. 50s, 60s, whatever. And that was like the picture-perfect white American family back in the 50s, you know? Like, this is the way small towns are supposed to be. It's advancing. These kids are making this YouTube channel. They don't like that. And they don't want their town to have these advancements, which just seems strange. So the whole motivation is just fucking weird. Like, you know, if you're not into technology or whatever, just don't buy a laptop. Like, I mean, you know, you don't have to kill the town because the world is having modern advancements. Now, different things within the movie, when not connected to that overall plot that we get vomited on us, because there's a ton of exposition, like I said, were fine. Like, the kills were okay. There were some really good ones. By the way, there's a kill when one of the kids, that's their friend, is weightlifting, bench pressing, and one of the clowns comes in and basically uses the weight to like chop his head off, and it rolls off into the cooler, and then guess what? It cuts to the next scene. That's what I'm talking about. You don't get a chance to sit with those kills, especially the good ones. The opening kill was good. The kind of Jaws remake kill was good. You know, there were some good ones, but most of them were just kind of eh. And when it comes to comedy, where was the comedy? Like, they would insert jokes that you would have to stop and go, was that a joke? Because nothing has felt jokey up until that point. One of my favorite ones, though, where I did laugh out loud, is Quinn and another girl are on the run from a clown. And they get into this, they find this house, they go into the house, and it turns out there's a clown in the house also waiting for them, and has a pitchfork. And he stabs, not Quinn, but he stabs the other girl with the pitchfork and like lifts her up in the sky, drops her down, and she has the pitchfork in her stomach. And Quinn comes over to help her, and she's like, "Is it bad? Is it bad?" And Quinn's like, "Girl, it's bad." That cracked me up. Okay, I was into that joke. But generally speaking, it didn't have a horror comedy tone. It had a more YA, like, horror slasher tone, you know. So it was, and then jokes would be thrown in here and there that just seemed kind of out of place, honestly. You know, one thing I know that this movie kind of failed for me is it didn't really entice me to read the book or listen to the audiobook. I don't really care. I don't care. Friendo did not impress me as a killer because of that reveal. If the ambiguity had stayed in place and it was just a clown, or even if it was a group of clowns, and we didn't know that tie-in this early on, the intrigue would exist for me. And if it was just a series of kills and these kids trying to survive that night, and do, obviously, because the movie has to end at some point, then that's a cliffhanger enough for me. You know, the whole tie-in with the elderly people and the gay romance, and all, I mean, it just felt unneeded and unnecessary. It felt like it was almost forced in order to be topical or relevant, you know, to people that might be watching it in modern times. So it was okay, but it's definitely not, in my opinion, as lauded, should be lauded as highly as I've seen it in recent reviews. And I apologize if you're one of the ones that's on the high horse with this movie. I do think it's good if you like teen slasher movies, because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. And you will see a clown, or clowns. You will see clowns. You will see cornfields, although there was not enough cornfields. There was not enough clowns in the cornfield, because we get the opening scene with the cornfield. The girls are walking through the cornfield, but I feel like there could have been more corn. That's it. That's my... if you fast forwarded, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I really was excited to see this thing, and at the end of the day, it was just kind of okay. So that's where I fall on Clown in a Cornfield. What did you guys think of this movie, if you've gotten a chance to see it, or are you planning on seeing it? I hope you, if you're listening to this part, I hope you have, because I just did my whole spoiler thing. Let me know what you thought down in the comments. I'll see you guys out here next time in the garage.